thoughts and approaches on in relation to strategy and tactics in terms of and also co-ownership, of the struggle to access information. From after China, let us have Henry Maina.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to talk about the issue of advocacy, elections, and revolution. And my name is Henry Maina. I work with Article 19, Eastern Africa. I would first like to indicate that Article 19 has been involved in advocacy on the issue of right to information for a long time now. And it takes two main formats. One is about setting standards. Setting standards in understanding what are the minimum principles on the issue of right to information if we want to engage in advocacy on it. The second one has been, in terms of setting those standards, we were among the first people to develop a model RTI law so that people can use it to gauge how well the laws they are developing fitting into it. We've also been among the first people to develop an elaboration of how may we understand the issue of right to information and national security. I remember Honorable Roland asking how people deal with defense and others. So Article 19 was among the first organizations to elaborate how countries may deal with such a critical issue. Our second approach in doing advocacy has been to work in networks and partnerships. So we've worked both at national level, at international levels, and sub-regional levels. And an example is that we are part of the FOIA-net, which Toby will talk about. So I will not talk about the international part of nearly over 200 organizations that continue to work on the issue of right to information. But at a regional level, we've been part of the advocacy efforts that have seen the African Commission on Human and People's Rights expand the mandate of the Special Rapporteur to include right to information. If you all remember, Tammy talked about it yesterday, that the initial conceptualization was that her mandate was purely on freedom of expression. So Article 19 was part of the groups that led the advocacy to expand that mandate so that it includes right to information. At a sub-regional level, we've been part of the process that has worked with the East African community to develop a protocol on good governance, which has elaborate provisions on right to information. And then we are hoping that the East African community will begin to show how sub-regional documents might show a semblance of adhering to all the principles. I know that ECOWAS has begun their process, but we also know that the document fell short of incorporating all the minimum principles that will be required. At a national level, we've moved processes to try and seek constitutional guarantees. We all know that most countries had constitutions that did not clearly guarantee right to information. An example of such a constitution was the Kenya's former constitution. And Article 19 participated in the process. And to borrow from what Said was saying, people understood right to information to mean press freedom. And then you would see that most of the constitutions on the continent have one provision on freedom of expression and too many exemptions going around it. So one of the positive things that has come out of our advocacy was to have a constitutional provisions that are very clear on freedom of expression, press freedom, and right to information. And the Kenyan constitution, current constitution, is a good example on how to differentiate those three and guarantee them all. And Article 19 participated in drafting those articles as they are. The challenges were perhaps when we put the need to draft a standalone law as a priority law the first year of legislation, most politicians were not happy about it. So we have a constitutional guarantee, but not the passing of a standalone legislation is not a priority. But Article 19 has also been involved in advocacy around specific RTI laws in the issue of Uganda, Ethiopia, and Rwanda. And then the example of Ethiopia and Rwanda are good things that, having developed expert skills, Article 19 has either been asked to offer private consultancies to states to draft such laws. And the result is that you will see the draft law of Rwanda, which was drafted by one of the FOI network members, and the one of Ethiopia drafted by Toby, are quite progressive because they met certain minimum standards. In terms of implementation, we've worked with a few of the people in seeking implementation. And for example, in Kenya, we work with a number of organizations who are members of the FOI network, made up of about 35 organizations, to one, use citizens to monitor the use of devolved funds. And then in our midst is a gentleman who works with National Taxpayers Association, which is not a very friendly organization to most politicians who, because they don't manage their constituency development funds well. And their reports have been used very well in certain situations. We've seen members of parliament lose elections when the reports on their constituency are given out, that some of them have not used the money at all because they did not understand the processes of getting the money. Others have misused it. And then borrowing from what we've seen in what Anjali was talking about in India, in Kenya, the turnover rate of MPs is extremely high. Estimated about 65% of MPs lose elections because it's pointed out that they mismanaged their resources. So access to information is becoming quite clear. Another example is the issue of access to information currently and IDPs, which is a program that Article 19 is running. And we've been able to show that after 3 billion Kenya shillings were pumped into resettlement of IDPs, so many were still in the camps because certain people in government, in the provincial administration, had created a ghost list of IDPs. And then therefore they are the ones who are benefiting and the genuine IDPs were being left out. So at implementation level, we are beginning to break that information to issues that affect the locals. Another example, Article 19 has just done a study on access to information and right to health. And Kenya is among those countries that have been running a medical social waiver since IMF and World Bank sanctions from 1992. And we picked on a few hospitals, Kenyatta General Hospital being one of them, which has the highest referral bill, and asked, just tell us who have been the beneficiaries. We had too many women retained in the hospitals after delivery because they could not pay the bills, yet Kenyatta was saying that so many of them have benefited. And then in doing that, of course, the minister had to rush and say, let's waive all that, and then let's see how we work on the structures to ensure that the process is different. So that advocacy process, as I want to just summarize that, takes lobbying towards constitutional provisions, specific laws, regional efforts. The implementation has taken a sectoral approach. And I would appreciate General Honorable Gitobi Manyara has just been helping one of the people who were dismissed from our military after the 1982 attempted coup. And in a mini trial, he pushed that the general gets access to payment records of people who were at his level when he was dismissed in 1984. And then the court has made a decision on the issue of defense payrolls not being a security issue, that they have to be tabled. So already in terms of implementation, there is a progressive move where we are having a strong member of parliament, but also a human rights lawyer, trying to test what are the constitutional provisions and how we get forward from that. So in country specific, Kenya has the Freedom of Information Network, which has over 35 organizations, and all trying to take different sectors and engaging in pushing the right to information forward. In Rwanda, we've just begun to work with Rwanda Civil Society forum, which is trying to pull together both government and non-governmental organizations to push the process forward. In Uganda, URINET and AFIC have done exemplary work, including just recently testing why the Ministry of Information was not tabling implementation reports. And it is when those questions were asked that a law that had been passed in 2005 had the regulations gazetted this year. So advocacy is beginning to change that landscape. IDASA, which is a South African organization, is working with a few others on trying to implement right to know and right to education. I wouldn't talk about the issue of revolutions at all, but on the issue of elections, I think what we've seen that where domestic observers have been allowed access to information in terms of registers of voters and scrutiny of voting processes, the elections have tended to be fair and free, and most people have accepted the results. Where that process has been done in secrecy, there's been tension. And you all know Kenya now, Cote d'Ivoire, and others, that when you want to announce the results from a secluded boardroom, the result is that you create more anarchy than what the elections were supposed to do, to just endorse or change people who are supposed to rule us. Thank you very much.